There's a plethora of common money rules that are often touted as foolproof guidelines for managing your finances. But the question is following them right for you? Hello, 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 and welcome to More Than Money, a podcast where we have nuanced conversations about money, business, and life, where we take the time to explore the human side of money, because success with money is never just about the numbers. I'm your host, Jacquette Timmons, and I am really, really glad that you've taken the time to join me today. So, whether this is your very first episode or one of many, again, thank you. And before we dive into today's episode, I know that if you are a longtime listener, you have heard me extend invitations to explore working with me one-on-one, whether that's in the capacity of my one-on-one private coaching practice or joining me and a group of other people for the biannual pricing masterclass that I host. But it occurred to me that I actually have never really described to you what it is like to work with me. So stay tuned because I am working on an episode, maybe two, to explore all of that and to share with you what does that actually look like and what do I do and what are some of the benefits you can get from working with me. So stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, let's get into today's show. So, a couple of days from when I am recording this episode, I am going to be a guest on an industry podcast for wealth management professionals. And we are going to talk about the rules of thumb when it comes to investing in wealth management. And since I haven't yet had that conversation, I am sort of jumping the shark a bit, as the saying goes. But the focus of what I know we're going to discuss is what inspired the topic for the episode that we're going to dive into here today. And as you likely know, in the realm of personal finance, there is a plethora of common money rules that are often touted as foolproof guidelines for managing your finances. And often they are positioned as if you just do these things, you will be guaranteed financial success. You know, things such as pay yourself first, spend less than you earn, invest, have little to no debt. And as I frequently share, what makes these rules and others like them tricky is that at the end of the day, they are prudent practices. It is wise to do these things. However, I've not been shy about why I feel rules like these also tend to miss the mark and cause people to feel money shame in the form of embarrassment, guilt, or inadequacy when they fall short of being able to follow them or at all, or being able to follow them consistently. And look, I get it. Rules are easy, and this ease is what makes them appealing. Rules offer simplicity and convenience. And given the complex lives that we all live, who the heck doesn't want that? But rules like the ones that I've just mentioned, and the ones that I know we are going to talk about when I am a guest on the industry podcast that I mentioned, they do come at a cost. And they come at a cost in the form of missing the mark because they lack any personalization, as they are not predicated on your particular financial situation, your goals, or your values. You know, take, for example, the rule of your housing costs shouldn't be more than 30% of your income. Well, they fail to say often is whether that's your gross or your net. So that's one issue. But also, what about if you live in a expensive market versus another market? That 30%, yeah, the percentage is the same, but the impact of that is very, very, very different. So that's one. Additionally, The problem with rules is that they kind of let you off the hook. And they let you off the hook because they allow you to bypass doing any deep thinking or evaluation of your choices and your trade-offs. And so, as a result of this minimal effort, you don't have to don a critical hat and take the time to review your decision-making process. So, in short, it's just easier to follow a set formula of rules than it is to invest the time to craft a personalized and nuanced financial game plan that's tailored to you and your individual needs, wants, and goals. But it's also easier to follow rules because it is our natural tendency. It is our natural human tendency to conform, whether we are conforming for the sake of social validation, out of fear of disapproval, or abdicating to the expertise of others. And so let me be really, really clear before I continue. I am not rule shaming anyone. I'm not rule shaming you or anyone else. And besides, rules definitely provide a sense of guidance and structure. And I'd even go so far as to say they provide comfort, but they also give the illusion of there being a clear-cut path to financial stability, security, and success. And that is why it is essential to recognize the limitations of adopting a one size fits all approach, because your financial journey is unique to you and to you and to who, I should say, and to what is important to you. And so it's a reminder that what works for someone else may not work for you and vice versa. So here's another example. Let's say there's a change in your circumstances. And because of that change, you can no longer do a fixed percentage of savings when it comes to your income because it's unfeasible. It's not something that you can really, really do at this moment in time. And on the flip side, a change in someone else's circumstances might be the very thing that makes it easier for them to do this, to follow a particular percentage of, say, saving 20 to 30% of their gross income. Or let's take it to what's happening in the market right now, right? Given the current market performance of the stock market, it may make sense for you to lock in some of your gains and sell some of your shares, some of your positions. Whereas for someone else who is utilizing a dollar cost averaging approach and they realize that sometimes they're going to buy at a high and also buy at a low, they are going to continue buying even while the market is high right now, because that is what makes sense for them. The thing about rules is this: in order to remain consistent with the rules that you follow, the rules must align with what you need and with what you want. And yes, I know this intellectually. But as the saying goes, the rubber meets the road when doubt and fear about whether you've made or are making the correct choices creeps in, and you begin to doubt, right? And you quickly default because of that doubt, because of that fear, you default to the comfort that comes with following the rules of thumb. The term personal finance means so much more than just how you manage your own money, especially when you consider how doing so intersects with broader familial, cultural, societal, and economic considerations. After all, your decisions don't just affect your immediate family, but your other loved ones too. Your decisions can often have a ripple effect on your community and society as a whole. I mean, like, think about it. Do you ever wonder how your consumer behavior and borrowing patterns and borrowing behavior or lack thereof, do you ever wonder how that shows up in the inflation numbers that we often hear about? We often hear those numbers and we're like, oh, that's a number that is not at all connected to us, when it is very much connected to us because we contribute to that numbers by what we do and also what we don't do. Your decisions are also affected by the access to financial resources, your access to opportunities for wealth accumulation, and the degree to which systemic barriers to financial empowerment and advancement are things that you've bumped up against. And so, one of the many, many, many reasons that you will hear me shouting from the proverbial rooftop every chance I get that money is about so much more than the numbers is because personal finance is deeply connected to your goals, your priorities, and your values. And I would also add, along with what you believe is possible. And if we give ourselves permission to zoom out a bit, here's what you'll see. You'll see that the industry, the personal finance industry, certain segments of it anyway, they like it when you define personal finance narrowly through the lens of common, and some might say rigid perhaps, rules of thumb that you apply to the various aspects of your money. Why? Because after all, what is simpler for you is also simpler for those who espouse this way of thinking. It makes their job very, very easy. But because the circumstances of your financial journey are unique to you, there is no one size fits all approach that will equally work for you as well as it does for someone else. So when you define personal finance, you'd really benefit from leaning into what I think is a very critical question. And it is, what is optimal for me? What is optimal for you? Is really what I want you to say. What is optimal for you? But when I say that, I mean, what is optimal for me? And usually, what is optimal tends to be more right than it is easy. And this is a much more involved and complex experience. And what that means is that suggesting that people blindly follow common rules of thumb, whether it regards personal finance more broadly or investing and wealth management more specifically, drives me bonkers. And this is something that I shared with the podcast host during our pre-interview call. And it drives me bonkers because having said all of what I said, rules aren't inherently wrong. There's nothing inherently wrong with them. And no, I'm not talking out of the other side of my face when I say that. But from my perspective, it is really essential to recognize when you are indeed taking the easy path by following just rules blindly, instead of making sure that you are making the choices that are really, really right for you. And so here's a suggestion. Lean into those common rules, use them, but use them more as a reference point to help you discover so that you can create and then end up playing by your own rules. Because this, my friend, is how you challenge conventional wisdom and carve out your own path to financial success and fulfillment. So be a rule breaker and create your own rules. Well, that is it for today, folks. As always, thank you so much for listening and listening all the way into this point. If you'd like to show appreciation for this podcast or this particular episode, please do me a favor and share it so that we can reach more people than we ever could on our own. And if you happen to be listening on Apple Podcasts, please take a moment to leave a rating and a review. One, we do read the reviews, we do check the ratings, and besides, it helps us with their algorithm. And if you are watching on YouTube, thank you so much for tuning in and doing that. And please leave a comment below so that we can see who's watching. And if you'd like to buy me a coffee, here's how you can do that. buymeacoffee.com/Jaquette. buymeacoffee.com/Jaquette. I'll be back with another episode, and I hope that you will too. Until then, remember, it's about more than money.